Welcome to In Good Company. I'm Luke Casey, one of the founders of Woodhurst, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Ben Nadel, one of the other founders, and Phil Stewart, CEO of Finyx. This is a really exciting discussion for us today because in late March of this year, Woodhurst joined the Finyx group. And today we're going to unpack what that means for our clients, for our people, and also we're going to touch upon the future of the consulting industry and what it's going to take to thrive across the next 5 years. So let's kick off with a couple of introductions. If you can introduce yourself and also Woodhurst and Finyx, that'd be great. So Ben, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Luke. So Ben, as Luke said, one of the other co-founders of Woodhurst. So just a brief background on Woodhurst for those of you listening that haven't come across us before. Luke, Josh and I started Woodhurst back in 2019. We had a mission to do digital transformation in financial services. We wanted to take an approach of hiring great consultants from the heritage consulting brands, and we wanted to service the smaller financial institutions because we'd seen the modernizations of the big banks, and we knew that the smaller financial institutions were underserved. So we've, over the last 7 years, been building a boutique consultancy that's now 30 people, just prior to joining the Finyx group. And we've worked predominantly in the building society sector with specialist lenders and small banks, and also in insurance and other areas of financial services. But really excited to be here today to talk to Phil about the news and joining the Finyx group. So I'll let Phil introduce himself.
Thanks very much, guys. Phil Stewart. I've been with Finyx now for 15 years, which is quite scary. It's the longest tenure I've done in any firm. Started out life as a graduate engineer in one of the big four, what was known as Deloitte & Touche Consulting Group, before moving into the banking world for the best part of 10 or 11 years, which I would still consider the sort of formative years of my career. Moved back into consulting in 2011, working with the founders of Finyx, and over time became an equity partner and ultimately CEO. So very excited about this transaction from a personal point of view, but also for the future of Finyx. Little background on Finyx. So Finyx was set up in 2006, so we'll be 20 years old this year, by an ex-CIO from the investment banking world. And in all honesty, it was sort of set up as a bit of a lifestyle business. It was to do interesting projects with interesting people and kind of step away from that big corporate life that Neil, who founded it, had previously worked in. And over the course of 20 years, it grew into 20 people, 30 people. And around 2018, we took a view, myself and him then being the predominant equity partners, that we needed to do something a little bit more sustainable with the business. How do we actually make it worth more than the sum of its parts? So we started on a journey of recruiting into the management team, getting some more revenue generating partners on board, crucially bringing permanent staff on, and through that sort of period of 2018 to around 2024, we grew from around 50 consultants to just over 100, with about 60 of those being permanent members of staff. And we did that with a view that it would give us a platform to be able to kind of leap forward and grow further from there. We started off life in the financial services world, but we're about 50-50 financial services and public sector. And we do all aspects of digital transformation, apart from the hands-on kind of technology delivery piece. So we would do operating model strategy, procurement, supply chain, business management, those types of activities.
And obviously, great mesh between what Woodhurst do and what Finyx do. How obviously this transaction is another step on that journey. How do we come about sitting here today? I guess what's the journey been like over the last 6 months?
Yeah, well, let me wind back a little bit further than that. So about 18 months ago, Finyx entered into an agreement with an investment partner called Equi3. And we were attracted to joining forces with them because of their experience in the in the sort of M&A space, if you like, and they could bring some additional kind of firepower and experience in that space. We knew that we think, and we still do think, it's important for us to grow in this particular sort of industry. We went through an exercise of looking at an enormous number of organisations, which we kind of ranked and scored in terms of profiles. But actually, the introduction to Woodhurst came from our people. So I believe someone who works for us knew somebody who works for you guys, and made an introduction to us. And then when we looked at it through that more sort of cold assessment, actually, there was a really great fit. And I think, you know, we're going to probably talk a lot about it today, but is, you know, the foundations of both of our businesses is the culture that we operate in, sort of more important than the industry or the services that we work in and the services we deliver. But, you know, what does it really mean to be either an employee of our organisations or a client of our organisations?
And that was one of the first things that Ben, Josh and I saw when we started talking to Phil and the team, was that cultural fit worked really, really well. It felt very natural. It felt very comfortable. And that's always been very important to us as we've grown Woodhurst, to make sure that we establish that culture and we tweak it as we've grown. I guess, Ben, that's a really nice segue into what does this mean for our people?
Yeah, so I think back to the first conversation we had with Alex from the Finyx Group, and that was August last year. And one of the topics that came up very early in the conversations that we were having, because it started as a partnership conversation, didn't it? So we talked about the way that our people work today. So if we take a step back and think about, you know, most consultants who've got into the consulting industry for the variety of the work, the challenge of the projects, it's a great career. Many have told us, and I'm sure it's been similar to Finyx and people that we've interviewed over the years with Woodhurst, is there is a real desire for consultants to do more for their clients. And sometimes in the larger corporate consultancy settings, they've found that hasn't always been the case, because sometimes at a really large corporate that's serviced by a large consultancy, you're part of a very big team. And I think what we found is, and it's been similar with the Finyx Group, is when consultants have joined a boutique, a smaller consultancy like us, the culture, the startup entrepreneurial culture, where you're really encouraged to go out there and take on more responsibility, both with the client and both with the growth of the company, is super rewarding. And I think it's why you see a lot of people rarely switch back from a boutique to a bigger consultancy. They usually, once they've found that area, they find that this is a place where their career can really flourish. So I think also that comes with some challenges. If you were to compare it the opposite way, at big consultancies, they service hundreds of clients globally. In theory, there's a lot of choice, there's a lot of moving around. And I think by bringing our firms together, for example, Woodhurst to date has only worked in financial services. And I think over time, our people will have opportunity to do similar projects, but maybe they'll be doing them in blue light, in law enforcement, in the public sector, and vice versa. So I think automatically for people who are in the Finyx, Woodhurst, Finyx Group, there's going to be a greater variety of work evolving over time. There's also the ability to learn from each other. I think the things that there's so many things in common, but one being consultants running lunch and learn type brown bag sessions. You guys do that, we do that. In our monthly town hall, we usually share a case study about a project, and I think we often hear the feedback from our people is that's the most exciting thing, besides what I'm learning on the project, just learning from my other consultants. So I think that would be one thing that has really occurred to me, and we've already seen, is just that excitement for the people to get to know more like-minded entrepreneurial consultants who they invariably have a lot of stuff in common with. They can learn from each other, and I think that's what it means for our people at the moment. It's just the excitement of getting to know more people, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, maybe it's a bit of a spoiler here, but one of my interview questions that I've asked for a number of years is, what do you think is going to be different about working for a small firm rather than a really big firm? And I'm usually looking for like the idea that you can get involved in more, that you take on more responsibility, etc. And that's always a good thing. But I was also looking out for the response, which is you can't hide. So actually there are a lot of people who make very good careers in these big firms, but never actually really make a difference. They kind of sit in big teams and they tick the right boxes. So, and I think that sort of element of still feeling slightly scared, being feeling like you've got the ability to be able to change the course of the ship is really, really important. And that's definitely something that we don't want to change, I think, collectively through the sort of the integration process.
Yeah, and we always look for entrepreneurial flair effectively in our interviews. We want people who want to join Woodhurst and participate in that growth of the company. We want people to be feel empowered to be able to do that, and I think that's why we set out on the Woodhurst journey, was to do more for our clients. And to by that, you need to grow, you need to have more people, you need to be able to service more clients. And I think that's one of the really important aspects of the transaction, is the ability to come together and service more clients in a better way, in a better manner, provide more services. I know that's something that I think to yourself, Phil, was quite attractive about Woodhurst, was about sort of completing that service offering, so to speak.
Very, very much so. Yeah, I mean, very, very typically, you kind of can think of consulting organisations or delivery partner organisations in at least three dimensions. You think about them geographically, you can think about them in terms of industry segmentation, in terms of service offering, and clearly, for what we found was that Woodhurst really strongly complemented the industry offering with virtually no overlap on clients whatsoever. Some similarities in the sorts of projects that we do. Yours clearly with more of an industry focus than perhaps some of ours are, but very similar in terms of our approach, our methodology, our values, our desire to work with clients to help them get over a transformational challenge, as opposed to doing it for them, which is what a lot of the big firms try and do, or just telling them how they should be doing it and walking away, which is what some of the smaller, more advisory-based firms do. And I think that's going to become our goal, and in fact it's why we were out in the first place looking for partners to join us, is that we think that there's a gap in the market for mid-sized firms that are small enough to care but have got the delivery capacity to be able to provide a true alternative to the full service transformation firms out there. So I think it's really exciting. Lots of opportunity for us to build out our service offering and expand out in terms of industry coverage.
Very Definitely. Good. I think it was interesting. We were talking about it before, weren't we? Woodhurst has done a lot of work in the building society sector, which is very regional still. It's very much like you describe in terms of those medium-sized businesses that do need that full service partner, but are probably, there's a big cultural corporate clash with a giant behemoth of a global IT outsourcing, and similarly with a regional police force or regional government. So yeah, I don't know what are your thoughts initially, because you already knew about the building society sector before you knew about Woodhurst, and you're obviously working a lot in the local government and local policing forces. What are some of those similarities, do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of sort of the spread, if you like, of size and scale, they're very similar. So if we take police forces for to start with, you've got the Metropolitan Police, and you've got one or two other very large forces: West Midlands, Greater Manchester, Police Scotland. But then they tend to tail off and be much smaller, and they're very regionally focused. Clearly, they service a local demographic. That's why they exist, but they are much smaller, although they face all the same challenges that the big guys do as well. And I think we find, in the same way that you see that the larger kind of consulting firms, if you like, direct all their attention to the very biggest of the building societies, national banks, the same thing goes in the policing sector. So lots of time and attention on the Metropolitan Police, NCA, West Mids, Greater Manchester, but not as much in terms of, looking at what's the Cumbria Police Constabulary doing. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to be able to kind of share that same approach in terms of taking lessons from bigger organisations, but being able to apply them at a cost point and a value point that actually makes sense for the smaller organisations. Definitely.
I think we've seen a lot of similarity in the projects between a big building society and a small one. The difference is if you have a team of people that can flex between, a client might need a team of 10 on a large program, but they might need a team of 2. And I think the kind of firm we're growing into be and already are is we very much want to and will continue to service even the smallest players, because they're just as important to the local communities they serve. And I think that was something that really attracted Woodhurst to Finyx, in that you were already on a similar mindset and want to continue doing that. So it's a really important part of our mission.
Yeah. And you've been out there, Ben, sort of talking to clients, delivering this news. What's the reception been like? Yeah,
well, it's been extremely positive. We've been, congratulated on the basis that, finding a partner like Finyx isn't necessarily an easy thing for a small consultancy to do, because, if I just take a moment to explain a bit about, like Phil did at the start with the Finyx journey, when we set up Woodhurst in 2019, Luke, Josh and myself talked to people that were joining as, we're going to grow the firm to 50 people and then we'll do something. We were very vague. We didn't say what, because we didn't know. And last year we stood up in front of the team. The Finyx conversation was only a month old, so we weren't, as much as we would have hoped at that time it was going to continue, we didn't know it would. So we refreshed that plan, and it was a 100-person consultancy. And the view then, we did give a bit more information on what that might look like. There's always the idea of being acquired by one of the big consultancies we've discussed. We've seen that happen at boutiques we've worked at. And we've seen the consequences that often, unfortunately, the people working there are back at a company that they've left for their reasons that we discussed. So it's quite common that I think no one would mind me saying that it just feels like they're gobbled up, they're absorbed, that company ceases to exist. So we did say that the other option would be maybe working with an investor, and merging with another consultancy. But putting those ingredients together for Luke, Josh and myself was a complete anathema. We didn't know how to do this. So I think, when I speak to clients about this, they say they quickly recognize that we found almost the dream scenario, which is we can continue to operate as Woodhurst. We can continue to be the service provider that we are to them, which is small, very much in the detail of their sector. And we'll come on to more of this in a minute, but we're not planning to quickly integrate the firms and make lots of changes. From our clients' perspective, it really is no change. It's going to be the same people. We're going to deliver the work that we're committed to deliver in exactly the way that we'd initially planned. We'll just be able to draw on some of the benefits of the wider Finyx group. And just one example, one of our clients called us yesterday. We were talking about telephony. It's not an area that Woodhurst's team has any experience in. I dropped Phil and Chris an email, and unsurprisingly, they've got a lot more experience and knowledge on that. So I think clients recognise that 30 to 130 people brings a lot of benefits, doesn't it?
I agree, and I think it would be unusual for anybody to kind of respond to you guys, knowing you, with anything other than kind of like a positive kind of message.
True.
Well, I think where the proof of the pudding really is that even in a matter of a month, we've already demonstrated that we can act better together than we could do independently. You guys have been extremely helpful in helping us out on a data project within one of our financial services clients. It looks like we're gonna borrow some of your resources to actually help deliver that. Likewise, we've been able to provide some lower price point resources utilising our regional offices and the fact that we're not entirely London centric. We've talked about how we can collectively go to market around some of our AI adoption methodologies, around looking at 365 adoption and return on investment, and more recently around digital skills and how that could be applied across the two organisations' client base. So, I mean, that's in a month.
Yeah.
I think if we look at what we can do together over the next couple of years, it's going to be really, really.
I think it's only been
exciting.
2 weeks actually, Phil.
Yeah.
Time
flies. Yeah, I mean, I think for us, this was obviously earlier on our journey, like Ben said, than we were maybe expecting. But I remember after the first couple of conversations, Ben, Josh, and I sat down and we said, the Finyx seem a real good partner here. Is it right just because it's not at the perfect point where we'd mapped it out to say, actually, we're not going to move ahead with this? And we thought, no, let's continue exploring, because I think the mesh between the two companies, that's not likely to be there when we came for another conversation in 3 or 4 years' time. So the timing was just perfect, and I think the companies complement each other so well, like we've already spoken about around clients and about people and about expertise, that I think we're really well set up to deliver in the future.
We are, and we'll reel off a few examples. The ones that come to mind is we have women in Woodhurst, and Finyx has women in tech, very similar. You do a yearly offsite like us, which is a good experience, a good way to do a strategy day with the team. Help me out here, Phil.
We're off to Alicante next week. Yeah.
We invited.
Yeah, we do ours later in the year. It's a long way out, ours. What else? I mean, the way that you actually come into the office quite a lot, which is, previous consulting firms I've worked at, you were on client site or at home. There wasn't much of a culture in the office. I think we're super excited about bringing the teams together in one office. I think we find the teams get a huge amount of value being together in the office. So that there are other examples, social clubs, regular social events, but just when you compared the two companies on paper in terms of the way it works, life of a consultant, it was just almost like we'd stolen your handbook,
and vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, I think. Yeah, there's loads we can learn from each other. I mean, I think, we applied, and it's not unusual if you co-pilot values of consulting firms, you'll get them out on mass. But actually, when you kind of compare to what you guys stated were your values, we stated ours, you put them two together, they were virtually the same, very much like the way that you state them. I think that's something that we will have to kind of, and it is an example of how we can enrich and build the whole, utilising your style. But yeah, I mean, I think there's an awful lot that's in common. What I also think is great is that there are one or two differences, and if I look back, describe the two sort of journeys. Finyx was set up by an ex-CIO at the tail end of their kind of corporate career, if you like, and really the way that it kind of initially grew was to capitalise on that network of a few senior people that had other roles and other lives out in the workplace. And actually, Woodhurst kind of has come from a slightly different direction, which is it's been built by people almost at the beginning of their senior careers, and you found a way of developing business through building propositions and kind of doing a lot of the hard yards, rather than perhaps where we had a bit of an easier ride to start with, which was to have that pre-built network. I think putting those two things together is also really, really useful. There's an awful lot that the Finyx side can learn from Woodhurst and its approach to developing propositions, marketing, getting out there, really engaging with a set of clients that you don't really know or you didn't know. And likewise, I think that there's things that Finyx have been able to do because of that sort of jump start, if you like, in terms of quality and maturity of propositions. We've had that many more years of building case studies, libraries, exemplars, kind of jumpstart tooling and those kind of things. So I think it's a real great mix of some similarities, but also some differences.
And we talk a lot there about integration and taking the best bits of both worlds. What are your thoughts around that? Because there's countless challenging examples that we can look at in the consulting industry where maybe the integration hasn't been quite as seamless as it could have been. We're obviously a long way away from full integration, but what are your thoughts around how we do it in the right way between Woodhurst and Finyx?
So I'm going to, Ben suggested that I come back to my analogy. I used in a previous conversation with some of the sort of staff sharing, knowledge sharing. But for anybody who's into sailing, there's a rally every year called the Arc, which is an Atlantic crossing from the Canary Islands across to the Caribbean. And there's several hundred, if not more, boats do this crossing every year. And as I see it, it's almost like we were two boats doing the same crossing. We're now two boats that are part of the same team. We are still going to be kind of pointing our own direction and doing course to steer, but we've got a buddy that we can ring up when we get ourselves into a sort of a bit of a pickle and need to get some additional supplies from one boat to another, or one of us has got some experience that the other needs to lean on. And for the first race or valley that we do, that's how we're going to run it. We'll run the two boats simultaneously. And hopefully in doing so and in sharing kind of knowledge and experiences and capabilities, what we'll set off to try and do the next year is to get one bigger boat and for us to operate as a single entity and do the same crossing. I think it's important to point to a North Star, and to me the North Star is that regardless of what the company is called, regardless of its sort of leadership structure and everything else, it is one firm with one purpose and one set of values that we all subscribe to. But we do it in some phases. We do a synchronization phase where we look to try and bring the two organisations into lockstep. There's the mundane, like bringing our accounting years into the same structure, and then there's exciting bits about bringing our social events, our recruitment, our IDE, our women in tech, our women of Woodhurst teams all together. And then I think then there's the hard yard integration piece, which is hopefully going to be more about how do we get the plumbing working at that point, because the people will already be on board with the journey.
And I think the great thing over the last couple of weeks since this has been sort of formally announced is, from our perspective, and I think from your perspective as well, the interest from our people is huge in terms of getting involved. They want to meet colleagues from Finyx. They want to learn from them. They want to start the integration activities already. So there's a real passion and drive to make this a success. And I think that's what's brilliant, because it's not a huge behemoth consultancy acquiring or merging with a really small one, and there's only one way of doing things at that point. This is very much like you said, there's bits to be learnt from both sides, which is actually really exciting, because we can make 1 + 1 = 3. And that's the best thing about this for me.
100%. Couldn't agree more. And I think I think I'd be really upset anyway, even if we hadn't gone through the transaction. If anyone said, like, this is the Finyx way of doing things, it's the only way we're going to do it. You've got to keep an open mind. We're learning as we go, right? That's that's just life. That's just business. So we don't want to lose that spirit. And there's clearly things that one organisation is going to come to the table with and go, wow, that's brilliant, we want to do that now across everything, and others where it's going to be the other way around. So it really is picking best of breed. I think it's important to me is like that, regardless of, and I keep on saying this, but the name is almost, the name and the brand to a certain extent is irrelevant. It's the values and the people, them making us act as a single community with a common set of underpinning kind of values that is the thing that will make this successful. And where it's been really challenging in the past, I mean, I still remember, to tell you my age, but it's when Waterhouse and Coopers and Lybrand got together, and for several years after the merger, they would talk about, are you old co PW or old co Coopers? I would hate to think that we would be in that sort of situation in a few years' time.
And Ben, obviously, that's all the sort of positive aspects. There will be challenges along the road to any integration.
Yeah.
How do you see us, I guess, avoiding those or overcoming those challenges?
Well, I think back to an example of when we started Woodhurst and we were 10 people. We didn't need levels or grades. Performance management at that stage, that size, it's a great period because it just happens so naturally when you're just essentially one small team. When we sort of got into the teens, the early 20s, we realized that we need to put more rigor around performance management and you need to come up with levels. And we've gone for something maybe a little bit novel by standard consulting standards, which is just, we don't have name levels besides you're a consultant, and then we do have a director level, which comes with a bunch of things that typically come with being a director in a professional services company. But how do we navigate that? And I think back to that because challenging conversations, and there were some differing opinions. So where I think it worked well is we discussed it as a team. There was a good debate, there was good communication, there was excellent transparency, and I think this is the same for integration, this is the same for major change. Not everyone's going to love it, but hopefully you'll find the right compromise, which happens through discussion. So we're going to have integration committees on both sides. I think we're going to make sure we are putting forward what we think is the best, and we're going to passionately argue with it. If a compromise is reached, I think we've got to work together as a team to remind each other. And I remember when I read Ray Dalio's principles, he said something like, in their leadership team, if you're on the wrong side of the decision in terms of the debate, that's no bad thing. But once the decision is made, get behind it. Because if you start being bitter about a decision that didn't go your way, your preference, and I think what we've done through our cultures is we've fostered that from the get-go. We have to do it with our clients to deliver major change. So I think we'll need to remind ourselves occasionally, like practice what we preach, because we're only human. No one likes change, and it's good to be passionate about the way you do things. And and I think equally we're the sort of leadership team that I hope that if we get it wrong, we won't stubbornly persist permanently with that. We'll go, right, that didn't land how we'd expected. Let's go back to drawing board. Let's course correct. So you're both nodding at me. So I think that's the general consensus we have, and I think we're already looking at setting something up like that. I don't know if you feel similar to that.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same. Lean into the challenges, fail fast forward, and I think there will be one or two tough things that we have to kind of get over. And you just have to face up to them and push on. We do a staff survey every year. We have done for the last 4 or 5 years, an anonymous survey covering all sorts of topics, everything from social events through to career development, pay, reward, recognition, you name it, we ask the question. And I think that I would advocate, that's not necessarily the same method, but the same underlying desire to, you've got to try and engage with the firm as a whole, and understand what their concerns and also what they're excited about.
Definitely. And what we'll try and avoid is death by committee. So it won't be let's put everything to a vote. We know what happens in those scenarios. So I think the approach we'll take to start with that we've discussed between Finyx and Woodhurst is you'll have champions of various work streams, but the important thing is to then not let that happen, behind closed doors. The whole firm can be updated on that on a regular basis. So I think we'll just see how we go. And, I think the feedback is a great one. I have a bit of perhaps a different view on the anonymous feedback. I'm quite keen to move to named feedback so that we can encourage that bravery to come forward with the fact you don't agree and reward it, right? If you don't agree with what's going on, it's great to get it out there and have a debate, isn't it? So but there will be some challenges, no doubt, and probably that levels one is a good example because it is a bit of a hot topic, isn't it? Whether you have, and we go in the future of consultancy, but you have grades in organisations, or whether you have more of a flat hierarchy.
100%.
Different schools of
thought.
thought.
I think it's not just some of it is a consequence of having maybe two slightly different ways of doing something and trying to normalise it. Some of it is also a consequence of just becoming bigger.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that like you suggest, like performance management when you've got 5 or 10 employees is really, really simple. You know, you kind of all sit around a table collectively, you sit down individually, you know, it's happening in real time all the time. By the time you're kind of getting up to the 100-person type mark, you know, people who are engaged in the organisation expect more formality as well. So it's even if you didn't want to have more formality, there's an expectation that it exists.
Yeah, definitely.
And we talked there a little bit about change and I guess change in the consulting world. I'm keen to come on to as well. There's obviously an awful lot going on in across the various industries we work in, but also from a technology point of view. What are your thoughts? And I guess, Phil, be good to get your thoughts from, you've obviously put some thinking into where Finyx is going on the journey. What are your thoughts as to where the consulting industry is going over the next 5 years and what's going to make a company thrive in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, it looks scary times. I mean, what podcast would be a podcast if we didn't mention AI?
Got to.
So, you know, I mean... Who knows to what extent the impact is gonna be, but there's going to be a huge impact, and I think it's sending a lot of the traditional really big consulting firm models into a bit of a spin. I think they're really struggling to try and understand how they will evolve their purpose in the marketplace. To the extent that, you know, I've heard one or two of the big firms saying they're going to stop recruiting graduates altogether, and that sort of seems slightly odd to me, on the basis that, you know, if they're not doing it, are they just going to hire them from other people if everybody stops doing it, etc. What's been clear to me for a little while, and I think this is backed up in dialogue that we have with our clients, is that they are looking for something slightly different from what's being provided from the really big organisations. I think in a lot of instances, particularly your mid-size organisations, feel like they're an afterthought, that they don't always get the best teams, that they're not properly understood. I think they look at some of the smaller firms and they would like to use them more, but they're concerned about their ability to be able to scale and react and adopt to the changing sort of needs of their transformation journeys. And to me, I think there's this middle road, and this is really where Finyx has been sort of going now on our sort of fourth generation for the last couple of years, which is to say, look, actually, we're going to focus on the UK market, but what we'd really like to do is become a firm that is big enough that we've got a full suite of service offerings, so we can do all elements of a transformation, whether that is the initial upfront strategy, whether it's part of the procurement of a solution, whether it's the operating model design, which I know you guys also get involved in, or the transition and early day operational sort of live environment, all the business change elements of it. So kind of doing that full suite service offering, but being able to deliver it in such a way that you genuinely are still passionate and care about the individual clients that you're working with. So I think that's really where we see a hole, if you like, in the market and where we're heading. The other thing that I think makes a big difference is I see this with Woodhurst and Finyx, and to be fair, one or two others in the market, but is to take this approach that actually we're not consultants in the traditional sense of consultants. What we really are delivery partners. We sit there, embed ourselves in our client teams and help them overcome their own transformation hurdles with their own people. We're not there to sort of do it for them. And we're not there to just sit there and critique how they're doing it. Oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. Oh, you should have done it this way. And actually, I think that there is that sort of fine line between helping and supporting somebody else through transformation and effectively doing it for them is an area that it's nuanced, but our clients do recognise that difference, and I think we keep doubling down on that as being a differentiator.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and one I know, Ben, you're really passionate about outcomes focused consulting, and I think that is definitely where we are moving effectively. It's about being that delivery partner. It's about supporting the client to meet its outcomes. Is that what you're seeing out there in the market at the moment in your conversations?
Definitely, yeah. And I think my advice to clients out there buying professional services is, if you haven't got a fixed price, outcomes-based contract with your supplier, then you're probably not in an optimal position. And I think when we think about the future of consultancy over the next 5 years, I would like to see, and I'm putting the client first here, not necessarily the vendors, is more managed service agreements where, let's say you've gone through a major uplift with your data capability. You think about, often one of the problems with consulting used to be, it was great to have your partner on site, but when they left, you felt this regression, this step back. Well, we had a huge team of great consultants in helping us move from A to B. B isn't the final destination. We're now going CDE, etc. So how do you, as a delivery partner, and I think we're now at a size, now we're part of the Finyx group, 130 people, enough capabilities to be, in a lot of cases, a near complete service partner for our clients. We want to keep growing that. When we're 250 people, we'll be able to do even more. But where I see it going, and I think we've got early examples of this with data, is we talked to a client about an outcomes-based program of modernizing their data capability. So very simply, and I'm not a data expert, so I'll keep it as simple as I understand it. Most organizations, building societies, probably regional police forces, no different. Their data sits quite siloed in their legacy IT architecture. A data modernization program, which often has to run alongside a wider modernization program where they may be moving into the cloud and procuring better technology and optimizing their process. That data piece, which has been neglected in the past, we're very determined to make sure it isn't. You move them similarly to a modern data architecture, something like a Databricks or a Microsoft Fabric, and great, you've used some expert data consultants to get you there. You can't continue to run, even if you're a large corporate, you shouldn't probably continue to run with that huge monthly bill to get you there that is required, because it's a big lift and shift. I think then the future of consultancy is moving towards a managed service where there could be a team of experts sitting back at base in the consultancy, like us, who can dip in and out as required, just to make sure that, because the client ultimately owns this, the client has a team of people that are equipped to manage their data estate. But just the same way that we sometimes need to call on advice from you guys, having that ability, and we're not there yet as an industry, I've got to say, we're still in more of the contractual, like, here's a statement of work, we'll get you to the deliverables, and that's good, but we need to be thinking about how we continue to support our clients in more of a managed service type model, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you sort of think about the different types of models. These things like, drawdown agreements, burst capacity. Sort of look at areas where actually we can provide an economy of scale, where there's perhaps only fractional work required across 2 or 3 different clients, but because we can bring them together and provide a single capability, we can do it in a cheaper way. I think the other thing that's really important is that whole kind of is that continuous upskilling and knowledge share that we typically do with our clients. I don't want to do the same project with the same set of consultants over and over again at the same client over and over again. What we want to do is actually help them build their own capability, and then move on to the next thing, and perhaps leave behind that kind of sort of low touch managed service that gives them the comfort and confidence that we're there to be able to continue to support them, but where their people are actually taking the lead on things.
Yeah, and that's a true delivery partner model. To your earlier point, you touched upon emerging technologies and AI specifically. Obviously, being small enough to be nimble, I think, is going to be really, really key over the next 5 years, because a lot of the big behemoths, so to speak, they will struggle to innovate at speed, just because of the size they are, they'll be tied into long-term license agreements with specific providers. I think there's a real opportunity as a smaller player to be really nimble and agile, and actually, as technology continues to improve visibility of what's out there for the clients, it's going to be easier for them to realize where value is going to be provided. And I think a small consultancy can actually get a bit of a step up on the bigger ones through that sort of nimbleness effectively.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think just as a sort of example is we ran a graduate intake last year, and fantastic people joined the team. Really delighted to have them on board. But we pivoted pretty quickly over the last 2 or 3 years in the way that we think about the bringing through junior talent into the organisation. So, we were probably similar to a lot of the bigger firms in, you bring them on and they do very sort of repeatable type work at the beginning in order for them to be able to create a good base level of knowledge across a wide range of areas, and we've thrown that away. We don't bring them in to just do like PMO roles or frankly create Excel PowerPoint artifacts for more senior people. We bring them in because they've got skills that actually our older, more senior folk don't have.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about bringing them in as being, genuine experts in this set of emerging technologies. And we've been able to do that very, very quickly because we're a small firm. Trying to change a graduate development program that's been in existence for 20 years, 25 years at someone like Deloitte or Accenture is really tough.
Absolutely. I mean, the data expert that's going across from Woodhurst to support the Finyx team, he joined us as a grad. We'd only taken on a few, and he's a junior consultant, but he is legitimately an expert in data capabilities that maybe some CDOs who are 20 years into their careers, they'll be looking for these types of talents. So it's a really powerful one. I think another one I just wanted to touch on briefly is this idea of community within what we do within our client network. So by being really into an industry, we've talked about there are 42 regional police forces. There are 42 regional building societies in total. We've seen bringing those communities together for knowledge sharing with their peers has been a great thing that, as Woodhurst, we've been well placed to do. I think Finyx, you're interested in doing that as well. And I think you could even look in certain topics like data to cut across the sectors, because sometimes the sector-specific knowledge isn't always the only thing that matters. So I'm really excited about the idea of bringing more clients together, more knowledge sharing among peers. It seems to be something that we don't do enough of in the UK. It's very big in the US in terms of consultancy-led leader forums, and I think we're going to really look to drive that forward over the next few years and in our industry verticals that we now have of financial services and public sector. So that's going to be exciting, I think. Yeah,
totally agree. And there are a lot of similarities between policing and financial services, as we'll touch on probably in a later one of these podcasts. But they're 24/7 businesses. They have a high level of national criticality. If they're not available, then it causes major kind of disruption to the country. They're highly regulated. They've got extremely sensitive data in them, but they're also shackled by legacy systems. They've grown up in the non-information technology era into both of them existed pre-technology, if you like. So they're not like some of the sort of the greenfield fintech type organisations that I know you also deal with. So they do have very similar sorts of challenges, and it will be really interesting seeing how we can explore knowledge sharing between the two. They also maybe feel more comfortable about talking to non-compete organisations.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to bring us to a bit of a close. I think it's been an absolute fascinating conversation, and it'd be great to hear from each of you, and I'll give my opinion as well, as to what you are most excited about Finyx and Woodhurst joining forces. And it could be something big we've touched upon, or it could be something quite small. So Ben, I'll put you on the spot and start with you on this one.
Yeah, and I'll keep it quite close to an area that I care about incredibly, which is talking to clients about things that Woodhurst and Finyx can do for them. I've already, in the first couple of weeks, I think I've got a long list of things that, talking to Phil and his team, they've done for clients successfully that are definitely transferable for building society, specialist lenders, small banks. And it's very exciting to see these things and to see the impact they've already had solving the same challenge somewhere else. So I cannot wait to be talking about the other things that we can now do and solve for clients in a really effective way.
Yeah, difficult question, but I'm in typical fashion. I'm not going to answer it with one answer. I'm going to answer it with three things. So I'm really looking forward to getting the two teams together, and what I hope from that is that what everybody will recognise is what we've seen through our initial conversations, which is there's a great synergy and great similarities between the firm, and a real opportunity for us to have a lot of fun together and deliver some fantastic projects. I think the second thing that I'm looking forward to is us being able to sell, if you like, or cross-sell some work across the two organisations, because I think that's proof of the pudding that shows that we're better as one than we are as two separate organisations. And I guess the third thing that I look forward to, I'm sure it'll happen at some point, but is the point at which one of my clients rings one of you guys up rather than ringing me.
Nice.
Yeah, very good. And I think for me, I'll touch probably upon your first point, Phil, about bringing the teams together. I think within a consultancy, people are our primary assets ultimately. And I think when we bring the two teams together, be that the first day in a joint office, and I know we're talking about sort of office space together and what we can do there, that will be really, really exciting. Or the first shared offsite. You mentioned about your upcoming offsite. And I think it'll be at that point where I sort of probably take a step back and look around and see people interacting and enjoying spending time with each other, talking about work, talking about non-work. And that will be a really exciting moment where we go, yeah, this was absolutely the right thing to do at the right time. So really excited for what the future has to bring. I think it's been a great conversation with both of you today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
And look forward to the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Onwards and upwards, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.